Hello, I'm David Craig Utson. I want to welcome you back to the Foundations of Executive Presence course. We're in part 3 of the overview, and we're going to be talking about the truth of the human experience. And we're going to look at how do we make sense of the world. This is really important information that can be really eye-opening for many people because we operate in a world where much of what we think we see is factual. Dr. Susanna Martinez Conde, who's a director of laboratory and visual neuroscience at the Broad Neurological Institute, has an interesting quote related to this and to this entire section of the overview. She says, "We do not have the neuromachinery necessary to experience the world as it is. We cannot sample every little portion of the world, every little pixel. To do that, we would need to have a brain the size of a building that would not fit in our heads. So if we do not have the neuromachinery necessary to experience the world it is, what do we have? We have this amazing brain that, as we look back in the last part, in part 2, that has basically two sides to it. The survival brain helps us survive. It learns, that you put your hand on the stove, it's hot. It'll never do that again. It learns when we go back for our MBA how to, effectively use a P&L, so we can do it with our eyes shut. There's this effective way in which we learn and create habits that allows us to survive in the world based on the learning. But we also have that other side of the brain. We have so much more to us, right? But let's take a look at how we actually make sense of the world. And this particular part of this section comes from work of Robert Scheinfeld, who's a New York Times best-selling author of a couple books. And in one of his books, this comes out of is The Key to Ultimate Happiness. And I think it does a very good job of articulating how we make sense of the world. So basically what Robert says is we have two primary fields of human experience. We have what he calls story space, and there's three primary objects in story space: people, circumstances, and things. And and all this happens outside from our eyes, outside, right? Outside of our eyes. Then we have what's called inner space that has three primary objects: thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. Now these things happen either inside ourselves, the inner space, or outside ourselves in story space. They conjoin, and then our brain, as Dr. Conde Martinez said, interprets what's going on based on a number of factors. And it's the meaning maker. So we make meaning out of the things that are occurring so we can make a decision about what to do, right? Makes sense? Well, here's critical understandings about all that. Number one, nothing in either story space or inner space has any inherent meaning. If you brought 6 people in to watch something unfold, let's say watch a short clip of a movie, and ask them what they saw, you would get 6 different interpretations, right? That's obviously what that means. Every person generates their own unique meaning and perspective. And the meaning we attach to what we experience on the inside and outside depends on our nature, our orientation. And what I mean by our nature, if you've taken DISC or Myers-Briggs or any personal assessment like that, it kind of helps you tap into what your nature is, right? Everybody has their own nature. And then also our past conditioning, that all our learning, all the things, all the experiences we had, where we grew up, our family system, where we went to school, our work experience, etc. All this conditioning directs our habits of attention that I spoke about in part 2. And in a sense, there's one Earth and 7.4 billion worlds, or how many people there are in the world. Everybody is residing in their own meaningfulness. Now, of course, we have collective meaning based on living in the United States or living in Minnesota or Washington, D.C., etc. But there's collective understandings, but we walk around with pretty much our own interpretation of the world. Now, how does our human artificial intelligence, as I call it, or what Robert Scheinfeld calls the mind machine, operates? Is your mind acts much like a Google search engine. When something happens in some combinations of events in inner space or story space, they combine and a lightning fast reaction occurs. In a sense, not really, but in a sense, your mind's asking, what is this? What does it mean? How should I react? And it happens in nanoseconds. So the key to understand is the reason why we want to become more conscious is so that our mind is not using us, in a sense, by us having to follow every reaction we have to life versus us being in the driver's seat and in charge, which again speaks back to the two different kinds of brains. Now again, survival brain can be wonderful. It's critically important to saving our lives in certain situations. But for the most part, in the world we're in today, we want to learn how to engage the conscious creative side of ourselves. As Robin Sharma says here, the mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And for many people in the world, they are run by their autopilot. So the habits of attention, let's talk about the good, bad, and the ugly. And I talked a little bit about this in the last part when I talked about the good uses of unconscious habitual attention. But the habits of attention we want to leverage and allow the habits to serve us in most cases are our expertise, our business acumen, leadership competencies that we've developed, ability to think strategically and plan, and of course your vision, your aspirations, your priorities, which begins to take us over to the other side of the brain. But once we get those in our consciousness, if you will, we know what we're trying to create. We also can then use our brilliance and intellect unconsciously to help us move towards those things. Now, the habits of inattention we have to focus on overcoming, and what this course will support you in overcoming is a lack of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Whenever ambiguity, the unknown, the unexpected events take you off center or negatively impact your ability to attend to what you care about most. So when we're taken off center and we're reacting, those are areas in which we can begin to value having more space and conscious choice. Not balancing relationship and task, right? And reactive patterns that harm engagement with others, like the three big ones that I always see in a lot of organizations is the need to be right, and the need to win or be competitive at all costs, and the need to be liked. In each of those cases, there's a downside. When we're only trying to be right, we miss opportunities to learn. When we're winning at all costs, we're shutting other people out, and we're not taking advantage of the collective power of team. And when we're trying to be liked, we lose our voice. So these are kind of areas in which, on the left, good things to continue to habitualize, from time to time check in on, develop those. On the right, these are things in which we want to gain greater conscious choice. Now, Dr. Adam Grant, who came out with a recent book for use out of Wharton called Think Again, and he had an interesting quote in that book I pulled out. For too many of us, our ways of thinking become habits that we don't bother to question, and mental laziness leads us to prefer the ease of old routines to difficulty of new ones. We fail to update the beliefs we formed in the past for the challenges that we face in the present. But in a rapidly changing world, we need to spend as much time rethinking as we do thinking. And I would say, in addition to that, we need to expand self-awareness, which is what we're going to be speaking about in the next part of this overview. So the key lessons from this are: we want to create a compelling vision for the kind of leader you most desire to be and reinforce it in your consciousness. And this course will provide you with an exercise to do so. We want to engage beliefs and other ways of thinking that support your vision and outcomes that you most covet. So this takes some self-reflection. What am I believing in this moment that's leading to this reaction? And if you start noticing that you have a certain belief that's leading to a reaction that's not helping you, just change the belief, because there's no inherent meaning in anything. So choose the belief that's going to get you someplace rather than holding on to the belief that's keeping you stuck, right? Which is what this is, third bullet is speaking about. Challenging a way of thinking that blocks our ability to embody our vision. And finally, take time away from thinking and make self-care a priority. So we'll be speaking more about that in the next, in the final part 4 of this overview, where we're going to talk about the most powerful means to expand your executive presence. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll see you in part 4.